Men over 50, top 10 testosterone superfoods that support strength and intimacy. Gentlemen, let me ask you something uncomfortable. When was the last time you woke up feeling like a man in his prime, strong, confident, ready to take on the day? And the night? If your answer is, it's been a while, doc, you are not alone. By 50, most men have lost a third of their testosterone. By 60, nearly 4 out of 10 already meet the medical definition of low. And here's the kicker. It's not just about sex. Low testosterone is tied to more belly fat, less muscle, weaker bones, fading energy, brain fog, and yes, bedroom struggles that nobody likes to admit. Now, some of you may think testosterone replacement therapy is the only answer. Others might believe that age alone means the decline is inevitable. But here's what decades of research and my own years of treating men have shown me. Food can either drain your testosterone or ignite it. In fact, the right foods can fuel your hormones, restore your energy, and bring intimacy back into your life in ways most men never expect. And no, I'm not talking about some exotic powder or magic pill. I'm talking about everyday foods, things you can find at your grocery store, that science has proven to boost testosterone, improve circulation, and fight the very inflammation that steals your vitality. Foods so powerful that in some studies, men saw double-digit testosterone increases in just weeks. So before we dive into this countdown, do me one favor, hit that like button, share this video with a friend who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep bringing you real, no-nonsense health advice you can actually use. Stay with me until the end, because number 1 on this list is going to shock you. It's something most of you think of as a guilty pleasure, but in reality, it might be one of the best testosterone boosters you'll ever put in your body. Gentlemen, grab a seat. This is going to change the way you look at your food, your health, and your manhood. The truth about testosterone after 50. Testosterone is not just a sex hormone, it is the foundation of male vitality. It helps build muscle, protect bones, sharpen focus, regulate fat, and sustain intimacy. When levels decline, men don't just lose desire, they lose strength, confidence, and independence. The drop begins around 30, about 1% per year, and by 60, many men have lost up to 40% of their youthful levels. Nearly 4 in 10 men over 60 already have clinically low testosterone, and research shows this decline is linked to a higher risk of death. This makes testosterone not just a marker of performance, but a marker of survival. I saw this firsthand with David, a 62-year-old coach who came to me exhausted, heavier around the middle and distant from his wife. His tests confirmed low testosterone. Rather than rushing to medication, we focused on his diet. Processed foods were replaced with lean protein, seafood, greens, and healthy fats. 6 months later, he was lighter, stronger, sleeping better, and his marriage had regained its spark. The right food gave him back the energy and connection he thought he had lost. The body never forgets how to make testosterone. It simply needs the right fuel. Nutrients like zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, healthy fats, and antioxidants are the raw materials that keep hormone production running. Without them, testosterone slows. With them, it rises. Studies show men with adequate vitamin D maintain significantly higher levels, and magnesium supplementation boosts testosterone even in older men. In my decades of practice, I've seen the same pattern. Men who eat poorly watch their energy and vitality fade, while men who nourish themselves with the right foods often regain their strength, focus, and intimacy. Food may not be the only solution, but it is the foundation on which everything else depends. Superfood number 10, spinach, the classic green with a hidden secret. When most people think of spinach, they picture Popeye or a side salad, but for men over 50, it is one of the most overlooked foods for testosterone and overall health. Its real strength lies in magnesium, a mineral many older men are deficient in. Magnesium acts like a key that unlocks testosterone, allowing more of it to circulate freely. Without it, much of your testosterone stays bound and inactive. Research in biological trace element research showed that men who increased magnesium intake had higher levels of both total and free testosterone, especially when paired with regular exercise. Spinach also contains natural nitrates that improve blood vessel function and circulation. Stronger circulation doesn't just benefit the heart. It directly supports energy, stamina, and intimacy. Studies from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition confirm that diets high in nitrate-rich vegetables lower blood pressure and improve vascular health. I've seen this in my own patients. George, a 66-year-old who rarely touched vegetables, came to me complaining of fatigue and declining intimacy. His diet was heavy on meat and starches. I suggested he add spinach salads twice a week and blend a spinach smoothie in the mornings. Within 3 months, his blood pressure was healthier. His energy noticeably improved, and he admitted with a grin that his private life had turned around as well. So here's the question. When you look at your daily meals, do you see foods that are actually working to support your hormones and circulation, or foods that quietly drag them down? Spinach is simple, affordable, and powerful. Lightly sautéed with olive oil and garlic, blended into a smoothie, or used as a salad base, it delivers nutrients your body can easily absorb. Cooking it even enhances magnesium availability. After decades of working with men in their 50s, 60s, and beyond, I can tell you that sometimes the most effective support for testosterone isn't in a prescription bottle. It's right in the produce aisle. Spinach is living proof. Superfood number 9. Extra virgin olive oil, liquid gold for men. For men over 50, extra virgin olive oil is one of the smartest choices you can make in the kitchen. Testosterone is created from cholesterol, but that doesn't mean greasy fast food will help. What your body truly needs is healthy fat, and olive oil provides it in the form of monounsaturated fatty acids that both support testosterone production and protect the heart. A study published in Natural Product Communications showed that men who consumed extra virgin olive oil daily for 3 weeks had a 17% increase in testosterone levels. Beyond its healthy fats, olive oil is also packed with polyphenols, natural antioxidants that reduce inflammation, one of the hidden enemies of testosterone. Chronic inflammation interferes with hormone signals and leaves men feeling sluggish, while diets rich in olive oil have been shown to lower inflammatory markers and improve circulation. I remember a patient of mine, Michael, a retired Navy officer who relied heavily on butter in his cooking. We made one simple switch, using olive oil instead. 6 months later, his cholesterol dropped, his waistline shrank, his energy returned, and his testosterone rose naturally. It was a small change with a big payoff. So consider this. When you prepare your meals, are you feeding your hormones or fighting against them? Olive oil is simple, affordable, and versatile. Use it as your main cooking fat, drizzle it on vegetables, or mix it with balsamic vinegar for a dressing. After decades of treating men, I can tell you that even small, daily choices like this can make a real difference in strength, vitality, and intimacy. Superfood number 8. Eggs. Don't fear the yolk. For years, men were warned to stay away from eggs because of cholesterol, but science has shown that this advice was misguided. Eggs, and especially the yolks, are among the most valuable foods for testosterone health. The yolk contains vitamin D, zinc, and cholesterol, the very raw materials your body uses to build testosterone. Men who are low in vitamin D almost always struggle with low testosterone. And a 2011 study in hormone and metabolic research confirmed that supplementing with vitamin D significantly increased testosterone levels in overweight men. Eggs are also one of the richest natural sources of choline, a nutrient essential for brain health, nerve signaling, and mood regulation. That means eggs not only support hormone balance, but also mental sharpness and emotional well-being. I think back to Robert, a 72-year-old patient of mine who proudly told me he had avoided eggs for over 20 years because he believed they were dangerous. His testosterone was low, his energy was flat, and he felt older than his age. I encouraged him to reintroduce eggs a few times a week, assuring him that the latest research showed no link between moderate egg consumption and heart disease in healthy men. Within months, he felt sharper, more energetic, and his blood work showed improved testosterone while his cholesterol remained steady. Another large review published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition echoed this, showing that eating up to an egg a day did not increase cardiovascular risk in older adults. So the real question is, are you avoiding a natural, nutrient-rich food because of outdated fears, while your body is quietly starving for the building blocks of testosterone? Adding eggs back into your diet can be one of the simplest, most affordable steps toward reclaiming vitality. My advice is to enjoy 1 or 2 whole eggs at breakfast, ideally paired with vegetables like spinach and cooked in olive oil. That combination provides vitamin D, magnesium, healthy fats, and antioxidants, a powerful trifecta for testosterone and overall health. After decades of practice, I've learned that sometimes the foods we were told to fear turn out to be the very ones that help us feel strong, focused, and alive again. Superfood number 7. Pumpkin seeds, the mineral powerhouse. Pumpkin seeds may not get the spotlight that other foods do, but for men over 50, they are a quiet powerhouse, especially when it comes to testosterone. They are one of nature's richest sources of zinc, a mineral absolutely essential for hormone production. Zinc acts almost like an on switch for testosterone synthesis, and when levels drop, testosterone follows. A study published in Nutrition found that young men placed on a zinc-restricted diet saw their testosterone levels fall by nearly 50% in just 5 months. That is how quickly the body responds to zinc deficiency. Beyond zinc, pumpkin seeds are loaded with magnesium, omega-3 fatty acids, and antioxidants, nutrients that reduce inflammation, support circulation, and stabilize hormone balance. Together, they create an environment where testosterone can thrive. I remember Frank, a 65-year-old patient who came to me complaining of low libido and frequent colds. His blood work showed a clear zinc deficiency. Instead of writing a prescription, I asked him to start eating a handful of pumpkin seeds every day. Within a few weeks, his energy picked up, he stopped getting sick as often, and 3 months later, his testosterone levels were up by almost 15%. What struck me most wasn't just the lab numbers, but the way he carried himself. His confidence returned, and he told me he felt like the old Frank again. Now think about this. How many times do we overlook simple, natural foods that can do what expensive supplements promise? Pumpkin seeds are inexpensive, widely available, and easy to add to a diet. Snack on them raw, sprinkle them over salads, or blend them into a smoothie. They may look small, but they carry big results. In my experience, men who consistently add zinc-rich foods like pumpkin seeds to their diet not only see improvements in testosterone, but also in immunity, energy, and overall vitality. Sometimes the underdog really does make the biggest difference. Superfood number 6, salmon, the fatty fish that fuels masculinity. Among all testosterone-friendly proteins, salmon truly stands at the top. It provides vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, and high-quality protein, the 3 essentials for maintaining hormone health in men over 50. Vitamin D is often called the sunshine vitamin, yet many older men don't get enough of it, especially during the winter months. Low vitamin D is strongly associated with low testosterone, and a study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism showed that men with adequate levels had significantly higher testosterone compared to those who were deficient. Omega-3 fatty acids, found abundantly in salmon, help reduce inflammation, support blood vessel health, and even improve brain function, which means they benefit not only testosterone, but also heart health, focus, and mood. Protein from salmon supports muscle maintenance, which is critical since muscle naturally declines with age. I think of Charles, a 59-year-old patient who always felt drained and depressed during colder months. His blood work revealed both vitamin D deficiency and low testosterone. Rather than relying only on supplements, I encouraged him to add wild salmon to his meals twice a week. Within 3 months, his mood lifted, his energy improved, and his testosterone climbed naturally. His wife even remarked that he seemed more like himself again. Stories like his are common because when men nourish their bodies with the right building blocks, hormones often respond. So here's something worth asking. How often are you eating foods that truly work for your hormones instead of against them? Wild-caught salmon, grilled or baked, is one of the simplest and most effective choices. Aim for 2 servings a week and avoid farmed salmon when possible, since it tends to have fewer omega-3s. After decades of caring for men, I can tell you that simple dietary shifts like this are often what separate those who just get by from those who stay strong, focused, and vital well into their later years. Superfood number 5, oysters, the king of testosterone foods. Oysters have long been seen as a symbol of masculinity, and unlike many old beliefs, this one is firmly supported by science. They are the richest natural source of zinc, a mineral absolutely essential for testosterone production. Just 6 medium oysters provide more than 5 times the daily requirement, making them unmatched in this regard. Zinc deficiency is one of the fastest ways to crash testosterone, and research published in Nutrition demonstrated that men with low zinc nearly doubled their testosterone after restoring their intake. This shows how quickly the body responds when it finally has the building blocks it needs. But oysters offer far more than zinc. They are also packed with selenium, copper, and vitamin B12, nutrients that support energy, brain function, and reproductive health. Selenium in particular has been linked to improved sperm quality and hormone balance, while vitamin B12 keeps nerves functioning properly and prevents the fatigue so many older men struggle with. It is no wonder that cultures around the world have valued oysters for centuries as a food that restores strength and vitality. I remember Harold, a patient in his mid-60s who had been married for over 40 years. He didn't come to me complaining about testosterone, about fatigue and a fading spark in his relationship. We added oysters to his diet just once a week. A few months later, he walked into my office with a grin and told me, "Doc, my wife insists I never stop eating oysters." His story wasn't unusual. Time and again, I've seen men rediscover their energy and confidence by adding this simple food. So think about this. If one food can supply the mineral most directly tied to testosterone production, why not make it a regular part of your routine? Fresh oysters on the half shell with a squeeze of lemon are ideal, but even canned oysters are an excellent option when fresh isn't available. As a physician who has seen the difference it makes, I can say that few foods live up to their reputation as well as oysters do. They are truly the king of testosterone foods. Superfood number 4, pomegranates, the ancient symbol of vitality. Pomegranates have been celebrated for centuries as a symbol of fertility and strength, and modern research now explains why. They are packed with antioxidants, especially polyphenols, which protect the Leydig cells in the testes responsible for testosterone production from oxidative stress. When these cells are damaged, hormone output slows, but antioxidants help preserve their function. Pomegranates also improve circulation by boosting nitric oxide, a compound that relaxes blood vessels and enhances blood flow. That benefit doesn't just help the heart, it directly supports energy, endurance, and intimacy. In a 2012 study published in Clinical Nutrition, men who drank pomegranate juice daily for just 2 weeks experienced a 24% increase in salivary testosterone, along with better mood and libido. Another study in the International Journal of Impotence Research found that pomegranate juice improved erectile function in men with mild to moderate concerns, highlighting its impact on both hormones and vascular health. I recall Martin, a 61-year-old patient who doubted that fruit could affect testosterone. He reluctantly agreed to add a glass of unsweetened pomegranate juice to his breakfast routine. 6 weeks later, his testosterone levels had risen. His blood pressure had improved, and he told me he felt clearer and more focused at work. That's the kind of transformation I've seen repeatedly with this fruit. So ask yourself, are you choosing foods that work with your body's natural systems, or ones that slowly wear them down? Pomegranate is simple to use and widely available. 4 to 6 ounces of pure juice a few times a week is enough to make a difference. You can also add the seeds to salads, yogurt, or oatmeal for extra fiber and antioxidants. The key is to avoid sugar-heavy blends that dilute its benefits. In my years of practice, I've found that men who consistently include foods like pomegranate in their diets not only see improvements in testosterone, but also enjoy healthier hearts, sharper minds, and a renewed sense of vitality. Superfood number 3, grass-fed beef, the protein powerhouse. Red meat often carries a bad reputation, but when it comes to testosterone, the quality of the meat makes all the difference. Grass-fed beef is one of the richest natural sources of zinc, iron, protein, and even healthy saturated fats, all of which are essential for hormone production and balance. Unlike processed meats or grain-fed beef, grass-fed cuts are higher in nutrients, lower in unhealthy fats, and provide the raw materials your body needs to build testosterone. Zinc plays a direct role in hormone synthesis. Iron supports oxygen delivery for energy, protein maintains muscle mass, and saturated fat is a key building block for testosterone molecules. Research supports what I've seen in practice. A study in the Journal of Applied Physiology showed that men consuming adequate protein from natural sources like lean beef maintained significantly higher testosterone during resistance training compared to men on low-protein diets. Another study from Nutrition and Metabolism found that men who included moderate amounts of red meat in a balanced diet preserved lean body mass more effectively than those who excluded it entirely. I remember Joseph, a 58-year-old accountant who decided to follow a strict, heart-healthy plan and cut red meat out of his diet completely. Within months, his energy crashed, his muscles felt weaker, and his testosterone levels dropped. Together, we reintroduced moderate portions of grass-fed beef once or twice a week. Combined with weight training, his vitality returned, his strength improved, and his blood work showed a healthy rise in testosterone without any negative impact on cholesterol. His case reminded me that balance matters more than extremes. So consider this. Are you avoiding a food that could help restore your strength simply because of outdated fears? Choosing lean cuts of grass-fed beef like sirloin or tenderloin in moderate portions of 4 to 6 ounces a couple of times per week provides your body with the nutrients it needs to keep testosterone strong while still supporting heart health. After decades in medicine, I've seen men thrive not by cutting everything out, but by choosing wisely and giving their bodies the right fuel. Superfood number 2, Brazil nuts, the selenium secret. Brazil nuts often surprise men when it comes to testosterone health, but just a couple of these nuts each day can make a remarkable difference. They are the richest natural source of selenium, a trace mineral that plays a central role in reproductive health and hormone production. Selenium protects sperm from oxidative damage, supports thyroid function, and activates enzymes directly involved in testosterone synthesis. A study published in the Journal of Urology showed that selenium supplementation significantly improved testosterone levels and sperm quality in infertile men. And while fertility may not be the concern for men in their 60s or 70s, the same biological pathways are what drive hormone health, energy, and intimacy. I think of Raymond, a 70-year-old patient who came to me complaining of low energy and fading motivation. His blood work revealed a clear selenium deficiency. Instead of giving him a supplement, I suggested he eat just 2 Brazil nuts a day. 3 months later, his energy had returned, his mood lifted, and his testosterone levels had risen naturally. His case is not unusual. Time and again, I've seen men benefit from this small but powerful dietary shift. The caution, however, is that more is not better. Selenium is a nutrient where balance matters. Too little, and testosterone production suffers. Too much, and it can become toxic, leading to problems like fatigue, hair loss, or digestive issues. That's why I recommend 1 or 2 Brazil nuts a day, no more. It's enough to restore selenium levels and support hormone health without risk. So here's the question. Are you giving your body the trace minerals it needs, or ignoring the small details that quietly undermine your energy and vitality? In my years of practice, I've seen that often it's not the big, dramatic changes, but the simple, consistent habits, like adding a couple of Brazil nuts to your daily routine, that help men stay strong, motivated, and engaged in life well into their later years. Superfood number 1, dark chocolate, the pleasure food with real science. Dark chocolate may sound indulgent, but when it's the right kind, it is one of the most effective foods for supporting testosterone. The secret lies in its nutrients: magnesium, flavonoids, and powerful antioxidants. Magnesium helps release testosterone from binding proteins so it can circulate freely, while flavonoids improve blood flow and reduce cortisol, the stress hormone known to suppress testosterone. A 2018 study published in Frontiers in Nutrition found that men who consumed moderate amounts of high cocoa dark chocolate had healthier testosterone profiles and lower markers of inflammation compared to men who avoided it. That's not surprising when you consider how oxidative stress and chronic inflammation can silently drain hormone levels over time. I've seen the benefits firsthand. Alan, a 64-year-old patient with a sweet tooth, used to end his evenings with cookies and candy. I suggested he replace them with a single square of 80% dark chocolate. Within weeks, he reported steadier energy, a better mood, and even noticeable improvements in intimacy. His case isn't unusual. I've had multiple patients discover that making a smarter choice for dessert can do more than satisfy cravings. It can support hormone balance as well. But here's the key. Not all chocolate is created equal. The typical milk chocolate bar you find at the gas station is loaded with sugar and too little cacao to be useful. For real results, you need dark chocolate with at least 70% cacao, ideally 80–85%. Just 1 or 2 small squares a day is enough, and pairing it with a handful of nuts like almonds or Brazil nuts can provide an even greater testosterone boost by adding healthy fats and trace minerals. So the question is, are you reaching for foods that quietly sabotage your hormones, or ones that indulge your taste buds while fueling vitality? In my experience, dark chocolate proves that healthy choices don't always mean sacrifice. Sometimes they can feel like a pleasure. Gentlemen, we've just gone through the top 10 testosterone superfoods every man over 50 should know. Spinach, olive oil, eggs, pumpkin seeds, salmon, oysters, pomegranates, grass-fed beef, Brazil nuts, and yes, even dark chocolate. These aren't just foods, they're your foundation for strength, focus, energy, and intimacy. Remember, food alone won't solve everything. You still need movement, good sleep, and stress control. But the right nutrition is where it begins. In fact, the men who thrive in their 50s, 60s, and beyond are usually the ones who fuel their bodies with purpose instead of convenience. So ask yourself this: will you keep feeding decline, or will you start fueling your comeback? The choice is in your hands, and it can start with your very next meal. Thank you for watching, and thank you for caring about your health. If this video gave you something valuable, hit that like button, share it with a friend who needs it, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss what's coming next. Every bit of support helps us keep creating more content to keep you strong, sharp, and vital at any age. Stay tuned, because in the next video we'll reveal more surprising foods and strategies that can help men over 50 not just live longer, but live stronger. Until then, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.